My name is Kerry Smith. The title of my book is Predicting Disasters, Earthquakes, Scientists, and Uncertainty in Modern Japan. This book is about scientists' efforts to reduce the uncertainty and around the timing, magnitude, and location of potentially disastrous earthquakes in modern Japan. This isn't the book I thought I was going to write. I had set off to write a book about the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923. That event levels much of Tokyo and Yokohama, ends up with more than 100,000 people dead as a result of the earthquake, the fires, and the killings that happened after that. And at the time I started thinking about this, there wasn't a lot of English scholarship on this event. And as I started working my way through the archive, through the sources and through public journals and things that had been written, I kept coming across this scientist by the name of Imamura Aketsune, who was a young seismologist, one of a very few number of seismologists in the field in Japan at this point. And he was insisting after the earthquake that he had predicted it, that he had warned the public about it as early as 1905, and that it had been the failure to heed his warnings that had resulted in this huge disaster. A lot of it could have been prevented. I thought that this is interesting. It's not a perspective I'd come across before. It's an interesting voice. And it would be maybe fun to write an article about that and sort of return to the main project once that was done. And instead, I went down this rabbit hole of both Imamura's life and career, his interest in prediction, and what he does after 1923. And that led me to post-war discussions and debates over the efficacy of prediction, scientists' role in making public policy and assuring the public, and then ultimately to sort of thinking about prediction as an organizing structure for looking more closely into the history of post-war Japan and modern Japan in general. I think of the book as being about three general topics. One is about the ways in which scientists, in particular in modern Japan, made certain earthquake disasters legible for the public and for policymakers. And what I mean by that is that they were able to show how they were beginning to understand the risks that the nation faced from particular earthquakes that hadn't happened yet. The second register is the ways in which not just these events become known, the likelihood of them happening, but actually they're the ways in which they become imaginable by the public. So this is sort of the second register on which the book operates, is showing how iteratively certain disasters become imaginable, become visible, become things that people begin to worry about in ways that they hadn't done before. There's a third thing the book covers, which is what seismologists and disaster experts would call short-term earthquake prediction. So short-term earthquake prediction, the idea that scientists would know in advance when the Tokai earthquake was going to happen, emerges as the best possible disaster mitigation response. And it's built into legislation that passes in 1976 that basically says, we're going to defend the public from this earthquake by warning them ahead of time that this earthquake is going to happen. So part of what the book is doing is explaining how that starts and then where it evolves after 1976 and where those sort of debates have gone since the earthquake in 1995 in Kobe and then the great earthquake in 2011. So what my book does is a couple things differently. It's not about one earthquake. I mean, it sort of traces this process through the 20th century on into the 21st century. So it's looking at disaster as kind of a constant state in Japan from the early 20th century on. And it's looking more at the scientists, I guess, to a greater extent than some of these other works have done. So it wouldn't exist without that earlier scholarship, and that scholarship is very important. But it's asking slightly different questions and sort of looking more at disaster as a category of analysis than I think some of these other works did. So one of the things I hope the book does is introduce the idea that disasters, preparation for them, responses to them, imaginations of them are another layer of analytical possibility in the history of modern Japan, is that there are other things going on that we may not have paid as much attention to that are also quite significant.